I think one of the lessons I've learned is, as a man, it is not easy to judge one by the content of their character. It's not easy. That line means so much to me, being introduced to it, watching it as a young man, growing up in this world. But I've seen far too many people say, and hallelujah to that type of phrase, but then immediately forget about it 5 minutes later and attempt to shortchange what that phrase really means, to judge one by the content of their character. I have a couple of examples. They're personal. I hope you'll indulge me as I try to get through them. In the early 80s, in Tacoma, there's a park. It's been on the news recently. It's People's Park in Tacoma. There's a rather big homeless camp there. They're cleaning it up. And that park sits along Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue. If you grew up there and you know it used to be called K Street, I remember when they dedicated it to Martin Luther King Jr. There was a certain time, as my mom was walking out her sobriety, she went to an AA meeting and took my brother and I. We didn't have a place for us to be watched, so we came with her, and we don't go into the meetings, so we went over to People's Park, and we had a basketball, and we were just shooting hoops by ourselves, and a group of kids came up, about 10, a dozen of them maybe. My brother and I are white, and they were all black. And they came, and now this is on Hilltop, if you don't know the history of Tacoma. And they didn't really ask to play, more demanded to play, and we obliged, smart enough, street smarts, to know what we're doing. And the long story short was, after maybe a round or two of the game, they beat the crap out of my brother and me, bad. And I had to walk through that and hopefully learn a lesson that wouldn't be imbued with hate. I have another story. It's on the corner of 12th and Union in Tacoma. On the southeast corner of 12th and Union in Tacoma, there used to exist an AM/PM. It's not there any longer. For me, it's kind of a happy happenstance that it's no longer there, because on that night during high school, I was out with a couple of friends, and we stopped there for gas. And another group of kids, there was about 8 or 9 of them, stopped into the gas station while we were pumping gas and started a fight with us. We were white, they were black. And they picked a fight with one of our friends. They picked the wrong one. His name was Reinhold. He knew how to take care of himself. And we kind of, a few of my friends, kind of wimps, jumped into the store, didn't want to get around the fighting. And Reinhold and this other kid, I don't know his name, got into a squabble, and they started fighting. And he picked the wrong guy. Reinhold got the better of him a little bit. And in the middle of that scrum, a gun was produced, and they cold-cocked Reinhold in the back of the head. He started bleeding pretty bad. And within short order, that gun was introduced into the front of my face. I could still see down the barrel of that gun right now. And while I sat there with that gun pointed at me, I had to endure one of those young men who I could only, with the amount of energy that he had, could only believe he was high on drugs. And he came and 5 times in a row took a running start and punched me right in the face, and I could do nothing about it. The best I could do was attempt to deflect it and make it seem like it was worse than it was. How am I supposed to judge the content of their character? It's not easy. Now, I've shared those stories in that way. I'd like to go back to the first story. I cannot hate. I can't. Because the truth is, in the first example where we were getting beat up, the kids, about a dozen of them divided, 6 of them, there were some bigger kids, there were some kids our age. It was a beat down. Half of them went after my brother, half of them went after me. And I got to say, my brother took the worst of it. And the reason why was because there was one particular kid there that protected me. While we were playing basketball, he whispered in my ear, one of the older kids that was kind of the ringleader of them, he said, don't go around him. And I stayed away from him. But when they came to start beat us up, he took the lead on doing it. And every time he would jump in to hit me, he would land a very soft blow. And he would make it seem bigger than it was. He would put on a facade for his friends. And while he would throw the punch, it would land softly. I didn't really get hurt. I felt bad for my brother that day because he took a much bigger beating. But that young man protected me. Didn't matter that he was with a group. I doubt he started that day walking down the street with his friends expecting that they were going to get into some type of scrum like that. But the content of that man's character could be easily judged one way, but in the sense that he stood up to protect me, I can only have love for him. I can't judge a group on its whole. You need to judge someone by the content of their individual character. We also got our ball back. He ended up grabbing the ball, and I remember they were going to take the ball, but he ended up making a big show of it and said, "You want this ball?" And he booted it, but the fact that he booted it gave us a chance to go get it and go home. Now, on the night where that gun was stuck in my face, while the scrum was happening, after my friend was cold-cocked in the back of the head, we tried to break it up, and there was another gentleman in that group that attempted to break it up with me from the other group. And when that gun was stuck in my head, that guy put his hand on the arm of the person putting the gun in my face and calmed him down. I don't know, I probably wouldn't be here today if he hadn't done that. So now that guy steps back a few paces, the gun's still pointed at me, and this man that was trying to help break up the fight had calmed him. Now, he did another thing, too. Every time that the other gentleman came and punched me in the face, this guy made a big show of it. "Ooh, you really hit him hard. That should be good." I don't know how many times that guy would have hit me or what they would have done after it, but this guy stopped them from going further. He protected me. How am I supposed to judge that group? Collectively? Or should I judge him or judge him by the content of his character? Now, if the police had shown up, he might have got arrested. I wouldn't have wanted to see that man go to jail. He stood up for me. I doubt he started that night wanting to be in that situation. Judging the content of one's character is a tough thing to do. I have a third story. Many of you know I have an adopted son. My family's up in
the speaker will just remind the gentleman, you have about a minute left.
I have an adopted son, Joseph. He's African American. About 7 months ago, I got a chance to watch him stand up for his little brother. And I guess I don't have time to give the rest of my speech on it, but it was really touching to me to watch race not be a part of one young man standing up for another young man against friends that he had already had. He'd already accrued, and it really touched me, and maybe I'm doing a good job as a father for my kids. Mr. Speaker, I guess what I would end with is I would say this. Each one of us here has our own squabbles. We have our own groups that we come to this with. We have people that surround us every day, and we have an opportunity every time we do that. While we might get mad at each other, and I've made you people mad, some of you on the other side of I forced you to actually have to gavel me a few times. But I know this, we have an opportunity every day, and we have a duty as legislators to try to look beyond the politics, look beyond all of the squabbles that we have, the affiliations that we have, and judge each and every one of us by the content of our character. And if we do, we will have earned our seat at the table of brotherhood that Reverend King talked about. And Mr. Speaker, I'm looking at you right now, and I'll tell you, in spite of all the squabbles, I hope you know something. I love you, and I love every member of this body. Regardless of the squabbles, I hope you know that if something were to happen, if some danger were to present itself, I would stand in front of you to protect you, because I know the content of your character, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate every member of this body, and I thank you for the opportunity to rise and share those testimonies with you today. Thank you.